Cimoooooooo. What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a meta-analysis for the February 2020 format. So we had a lot of big events conclude this past week, and even though none of them were major events by traditional standards, we had a 700-person Pasadena Regional. I think there was like an 800-person Indianapolis Regional, which is insane. There was the Cardmarket Series event taking place over in Europe, and while that was a smaller number at about 300 players, there were still some of Europe's best players competing in that event, so that was really cool. And of course, there was plenty of other regionals taking place across the globe. So today I want to kind of just compile all the data for you guys so you have a place to look at how the meta is starting to trend, because with events like the UDS coming up in Tulsa this weekend, we have the 3v3 Las Vegas YCS, which I will be attending, so I hope to see you guys there, and also the UDS taking place in Bogota at the end of the month. I just want to make sure you guys have all the information possible to do the best that you can. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. I want to kick things off with the overall breakdown from the Cardmarket Series event taking place in Paris. Like I said, there's about 300 players, but do keep in mind there's some of Europe's best players attending this event because there was a lot of money on the line. Sure, it was in the form of like card market vouchers, but I think it was like 800 euros for first place, so that's pretty good, especially if you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Then you don't really have to worry about buying cards too often if you can net that first place prize. So this is the overall breakdown. Cardmarket hasn't provided all of the top cut breakdown, but I do have the decks, I believe. I think it was something to the effect of 2 Salomon Great, 2 Spiral, there was a Guru, a Gren Maju, a Blue Eyes deck, shockingly. I really want to see what that deck was. And then there was also a Shadal Invoked deck, which managed to take first place. That was definitely the star of the stream, and if you guys missed it, you definitely missed out on something special. Shout out to Nefthys for taking that event. But, so again, this is the overall representation from this event, and this is interesting because again, Spiral was looking to be the front runner of the format. People were just fearing this deck just heavily and just main decking cards like Droll and Lockbird and all these different things to counteract the Spiral threat. And so the fact that it wasn't the most represented deck going to the tournament may speak volumes that people were either scared off of the fact that Spiral had such a large target on its back and didn't want to play a deck that everyone was trying to counteract, or maybe the deck isn't as good as we think. Maybe it's not as consistent as, you know, it's lived up to be, and it actually has some more inherent flaws that people have discovered over time now that the meta has kind of a chance to rebalance and reassemble itself after the aftermath of some of the prior events. Who knows, but it's very interesting to see that this was the turnout. But definitely don't think that Spiral is like out of the meta or anything like that, because it definitely still is one of the front runners, and if you're not prepared and equipped to deal with that matchup, you are just going to get absolutely overrun by Spiral's overwhelming presence. So let's go ahead and start off with Salomon Great. I want to start with the second place list by Dario Guzman, who was from the Pasadena Regional. And this list is pretty cool. It's actually main decking 3 copies of Debug and no copies of Flame Buffalo, in comparison to a deck list like the 6th place Jacksonville Regional, piloted by Nick Jodasing. You might have known him from the Pro Play Tour in Orlando. I believe he got top 16 there playing Sky Striker, but he was on Flame Buffalo 3 copies, but no copies of Debug. So 2 contrasting lists in terms of their overall theory. Dario figured that if you play Debug and you grab your Gazelle and then get Droll and Lockbird, since everyone is playing that to combat Spiral, you guarantee you have the Gazelle in hand, whereas Nick's approach was if you Buffalo, because of the way you stack the chain links, when you make your Bay Links, you're able to get Sanctuary and draw your cards before you get hit by Droll and Lockbird. So you're not guaranteeing yourself Gazelle, but you're guaranteeing yourself the Sanctuary as well as 2 fresh draws off of the Buffalo. So very different in strategies there, but overall the decks, it's 2 different Salomon Great variants. It's cool that there's still a little bit of ingenuity and differentiation between the 2 lists, and I think that's really cool to see that no one really has Salomon Great figured out at the moment, but Salomon Great has definitely been looking like one of the top tier contenders of this February 2020 format. Now, as much as I really want to bring you guys that Invoked Shadal list that won the Cardmarket Series event, it's unfortunately not available at the moment, but there is the pure Invoked list that Jongwon piloted at the Indianapolis Regional and took 4th place with. Now, this is pretty cool. This is more of a pure Invoked list. You guys might be used to the more traditional Invoked Mech Knight list, but this one just plays a ton of hand traps. It actually plays some more defensive traps as well as the main deck like Solemn Judgment and There Can Be Only One, kind of just building an all well-rounded build just depending on what the matchup is, because since the meta is kind of all over the place at the moment and people haven't really figured out what like the best decks are, you kind of just wanted to not focus so much on going second, so that way way if he was forced to go first, his deck actually has some pretty decent options. But seems like a pretty solid build. Invoked has actually a surprisingly high win rate over on Dueling Book relative to some of the top decks as well, so there could be something here. Do keep in mind it also did have the second highest representation at the Cardmarket Series event, so maybe Invoked is kind of creeping up there as one of the top front runners. We'll just have to see. Time will tell. But another big front runner, and this is really not as a surprise to anyone, is Lite. Danger Lite specifically. Some players are choosing to incorporate the Time Thief engine, others are not, but Catherine actually, as a matter of fact, took 4th place at the Pasadena Regional playing this deck, and one of her spicy techs was actually playing 2 copies of Frame Overload. Now this is pretty cool in tandem with Magician Souls, because what's nice is that you can pitch it for Magician Souls, and then during your opponent's turn you can banish it, you can add Gamma to hand, so that's pretty nice. Or if you happen to hard draw it, if you're able to either have a Gamma in your hand or you have Lambda on the field, you can just use it as spot removal to banish any of your opponent's threats face down, so that's pretty neat. It's just another layer of disruption that the Danger Lite deck can have. Again, 3rd highest represented deck at the Cardmarket Series event, and based off of what I was hearing from all my sources at all these different events, Danger Lite was also everywhere. So bear that in mind, that this representation for the Cardmarket event in particular is actually boding pretty well in terms of a macro level as well, but we still don't have any significant amount of data to definitely determine that for sure. Now the next deck is of course Spiral, the deck to beat of the format. Now keep in mind, even though this Cardmarket chart shows it having only the 4th or 5th highest representation overall, this deck is still everywhere. I'm pretty sure Spiral topped almost every single regional of this past weekend, if not in multiples, so that just goes to show that it is definitely still a front runner and probably still is one of the best decks of the format and probably the deck to beat, just because the fact that people are already playing so much hate for that deck, you know, that might be bringing it down a little bit, so just imagine if people weren't already prepared for it. But Spiral, still very strong. I have a list up for you guys on the screen to check out. This was a top 4, I believe, from a regional in Spain. It's just a very generic pure Spiral list, nothing too special. There was also still Scrap Spiral running around. I believe DeBlessin actually got 7th place, I believe, at the regional in Indianapolis, so again, Spiral still running around. Extravagant Spiral is also not gone anywhere either, so just bear in mind that all 3 variants are still very potent, very powerful, and definitely something you need to prepare for. Now, Altergeist is a deck that has definitely fallen out of favor. This could be due to the fact that Ignition Assault has been legal for about a few weeks now, so there might be enough copies of Lightning Storm circulating around to be an imminent threat to Altergeist being able to do well. Honestly, they still have to deal with Evenly Match and Twin Twister and Red Reboot and all these other back row hate cards regardless, so it may not matter too much, but nonetheless, here's a list that did take 1st place at a regional, I believe in Quito, Ecuador, so that's pretty cool, and it's still been able to top a few regionals this past weekend as well. So Geist hasn't really gone anywhere, but I definitely think the representation of Geist has definitely dwindled, so bear in mind I wouldn't actually put too much of a heavy emphasis on Geist when you're in your deck building, but keep in mind that it's still going to show up in some form or another. Now, a lot of people were writing off Orcus these past few weeks, but based off of this representation chart and anyone you asked who went to events the past weekend, Orcus is still running around. People are actually still side decking cards specifically for Orcus because they're afraid of that matchup, because Orcus is still very explosive. It can do a lot of the same things. It's just a little bit less consistent now that Harp Horror is banned. Here's a 60 card amalgamation that managed to make top 8 at the Quito, Ecuador regional, so that's pretty neat. Again, I don't think this is like the standard list you should be going by, but I mean, there was definitely 40 card variants that might be a lot more consistent than this, but it's still cool to see a deck like this manage to make top cut at a regional. Then there's also Heroes. Heroes not only managed to get 1st place at the Pasadena regional, but they got 2nd place at the Indianapolis regional, 2 of the biggest regionals and 2 of the biggest events in a long while, and Heroes almost took both of them. I've got the 1st place deck list for you guys to see here, but also on my channel if you want to hear the insights from Ulysses. I think it's awesome to see that Heroes are doing this well. This is a weird one because like I don't know if Heroes have the representation to really be like a big meta threat, but like the fact that they almost won 2 of the biggest regionals like back to back essentially, like that's something you can't really write off. You have to respect that to a degree, and yeah, Hero does have some hard counters, but at the same time, it's still a deck that a lot of people might start experimenting with or picking up just due to these results. And then the last deck that was on the pie chart here was Dinosaur, and Dinosaur is still a very explosive going 2nd deck. It can very well overrun the opponent in most instances. It's actually one of the few decks that can like semi-consistently break a God Spiral board, which is kind of cool just because Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is that good of a card, but think about what that can do to a normal deck that just ends on a very lackluster board by comparison. But nonetheless, even if it goes first, it can still do stuff like end on True King of all Calamities if you're playing a more True King heavy build, which I'm showing for you guys here. there's definitely some lists that aren't as heavy on the True Kings and more focused on the Dinosaur component of the deck, but nonetheless, Dinosaurs are here, they want to go second, and they are going to completely obliterate you if you're not mindful that they are in the format. Now, last but not least, I want to wrap up this video with a few of the other decks that are still prominent in the metagame, but might be more at like the roguish tier category, just so you guys are mindful of what else is roaming around. So first up is Guru Control. Again, Guru Control, very similar to Altergeist, still around, could definitely be hindered by the fact that Lightning Storm is in the format, but Guru Control, I actually top 8'd multiple regionals this past weekend, so it's still a very prominent force in the metagame. Then we also have Infernoid. Now this was really cool because not only did Infernoid get 3rd place at the Pasadena Regional, but it also got top 8 at another regional, I believe. I don't remember the location of that one, but this is cool. I have both deck lists up for you guys here to look at. One looked like a more going first oriented build from what I could determine with like the multiple Void Feast and Trap Trick in the main deck, and then the other one, which was the one from Pasadena, was more emphasized on going second with the main deck Lava Golems and such. So again, having a whole deck of main deck DD Crows in a format where DD Crow seems to be pretty good and a lot of people are already main decking, again, could be a pretty solid option. Also a very strong going second contender just because Void Imagination is an absurdly powerful Yu-Gi-Oh card. There was a small regional that took place here in the States where Sky Striker managed to make a top 8 appearance. That's right. I believe there was actually a regional in the United Kingdom that Sky Striker also took a top 8 finish as well last weekend. But Striker, I mean, again, it was smaller regional, so do bear that in mind. I don't think Striker is any like huge dominating force that you have to worry about too much, but there could be a Striker player or two at an event near you sometime soon. So just keep in mind that you might want to just at least read up on what the new Striker cards do and what their new strategies might be. It probably incorporates something to do with Mystic Mine, and of course I'll have Junior's list here. Junior actually did get 1st place at Pro Play Tour Richmond, so I mean, he's definitely a good player. So if it's in the hands of a good player, it might be a lot stronger than you might think. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was actually from Cardmarket itself, providing the top 10 side deck cards coming out of their event. Now this is pretty cool. When you look at this, it actually shows that Twin Twister was the most side decked card, followed shortly by Evenly Matched, no surprise there. Droll and Lockbird being the 3rd highest side decked card. I mean, a lot of people are already main decking it, so it might actually have been like number 1 if people weren't playing it in the main deck, followed by cards like Dark Ruler No More, Nibiru, Red Reboot, Mind Control. You got Artifact Sanctum in there as well. Then there's also Lancia and Inspector Border coming in 10th place there. So I like this because this allows us just to take a look at like what side deck trends are going towards. So if you're wanting to think of like games 2 and 3, which keep in mind you do play more games in your side deck than your main deck, you might just want to look at this list to kind of think of what cards people are thinking of. And then when you're in those 2nd and 3rd games, if your deck doesn't lose to some of these particular cards, you might feel pretty good about going into those other games that your opponent may not have outs for what your deck is trying to do. So guys, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this meta analysis. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.